One more second. Okay, backup recording is on. Tim and Shar, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Go ahead and share my screen. One second. Um, Welcome, everyone, to the Identity Implementers Special Interest Group for March 7th. Today, we are joined by Andrew Smith to give us a presentation on jumpstarting cloud agent identity. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us today. Before we pass it over to you, we have a few updates on some working groups and some announcements. So um, as far as announcements go, Sean, did you want to take these, or I'm unsure
Yeah,
who.
I can jump on the two of those. So April 2024, IIW Internet Identity Workshop is happening in Mountain View, California at the Computer History Museum. This is a 2 times a year event where the different clans of the identity community get together. Some folks are talking about decentralized identity. Some folks are big on open ID, and there's going to be a lot of discussions around wallets. So I'm wondering if we in the Identity SIG would like to spark a conversation, maybe in the next ID SIG call, talking about what folks want to talk about and present and who's coming. And, maybe that could be like a 5 or 10 minute thing. Secondly, Open Wallet Foundation next Thursday has its first anniversary. I'll post in the ID SIG Discord channel link if you'd like to attend the registration. Basically, the presentation is going to be talking about um, the accomplishments for the last year and where the Open Wallet Foundation is going in the next year. Zero knowledge proofs and ZK programming and blockchain application development. This is a workshop that the Hyperledger is putting on. It's happening in April. The zero knowledge proofs are a part of decentralized identity, and so that felt like a good fit. And then thank you to Shar, I believe, for putting up the recording for the Identity Plus Interop workshop that DSR put on. It was a great event, and y'all should definitely check it out. Also, at the bottom of the working group reports and release plans, there's a note. The EUDI reference architecture has been reference implementation. It has been released on GitHub. There's the link right there if you want to check it out. Open Wallet Foundation is going to do a workshop on it in a week or two, but it's not approved yet. So once it is, I'll post a link to the registration in the ID SIG Discord. That's it for me. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. We'll jump into some quick working group updates here. It looks like the Hyperledger Indie Contributors working group met on the 27th, just recently in February. Was anyone able to attend this session that would like to give us a quick summary?
Yep. We met last week. We had a presentation on a plugin to support self-controllable and devolvable group DIDs. So this is about having a DID to represent a self-evolving group of DIDs where members can join and leave at any time. So that was really cool. Got some updates on the Indie Bezu project as well, and there was a release completed for Sovereign Node 1.2.0. So yeah, it was a good meeting.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Shar. It looks like Hyperledger Aries working group met just yesterday to discuss some credential protocol reversions. Was anyone able to make this session that would like to give us a quick update? All right. Well, if you'd like to check out what exactly they were talking about, you can follow the links in this document and or on this webpage rather. Aries Cloud Agent Python met a couple days ago on the 5th. Was anyone able to attend the Aries Cloud Agent Python users group call?
Yes, we met this week. We had a demo about anon-creds in W3C verifiable credential data format, data model format. Let's see. We also talked about updates on the anon-creds RS in Akapai work. That's going well. Endorser support just got merged in. The status of Akapai 0.12.0 release candidate 1. I believe there will be a release candidate soon, 2 coming soon, and then updates on did peer and AFJ interop, and then moving closer to Akapai 1.0.
Awesome. Thank you, Shar. Looks like the maintainers group met on the 27th of February. Was anyone able to attend this meeting?
Yep, pretty much what you have there, just going over PRs and figuring out what needs to be done to merge them in and discussing release 1.0. So yeah.
All right. Awesome. The Hyperledger non-creds met just recently here on the 4th. Was anyone able to attend this session? All right. Well, yeah, we have a quick summary here. If you'd like to learn a bit more, please feel free to go to these links here. I believe we've met since that meeting. These have all been gone through. For the TOIP Ecosystem Foundry, it looks like they've met since our last meeting together. On the 29th, was anyone able to attend this TOIP Ecosystem Foundry meeting? All right, looks like they saw a presentation from Moby on Web3 battery and birth certificate credentialing. So if that sounds interesting, go ahead and check them out. The concepts and terminology meeting, looks like they've had a meeting since our last session. Was anyone able to attend this TOIP meeting? All right, looks like once again, some updates right here to their engine. If you want to learn more, always the link. These have not met as far as I can tell. All right, well, if anyone has been to one of the diff, either DIDCOM or interoperability group meetings, it was difficult to find any info on those, but if you'd like to share if they've met recently, now would be the time. All right. Well, in that case, the last box to check is the IoT Special Interest Group. It was unclear. It doesn't look like they've met, but if anyone would like to correct me here. And that brings us to the end of working group updates. Is there any working groups that anyone has attended that we just don't have here that they'd like to share a quick update on anything interesting happening in the community? And with that, I think we will hand it over to Andrew.
Cheers, thank you. Is there a way I can share my screen? Have I got permission to do that?
You should go for it. Andrew, good to go. We can see your screen fine.
Great stuff. So I know we term this Jumpstart Cloud Agent Identity, but it's very much about how we've actually spent some time with Microsoft Azure and how we can seamlessly make that experience of getting Occupy up and running in Azure a lot better, actually. Before I go into really too much detail around that, it's a quick bit of information around who we are. You know, some of you may know, some of you probably won't. We're a sovereign steward. We have been for about 2 years now. I'm actually personally the chair of the Steward Council at Sovereign. As ID Global, we're an endorser, an issuer of digital identities. We kind of focus a little bit on individuals, but seem to have, as of late, been dealing a lot more with kind of like identity for businesses and trying to get businesses more engaged with the whole SSI kind of ecosystem and things around that. Because of that, some of the work we've done over the last 12, 24 months has been very much around funding things like open source initiatives. We've done a lot of work with Animo, who I think they're quite a well-known organization. And one of the things we've been doing is building some kind of like open source tooling ourselves. And we built something around the Bluetooth connectionless sharing of proofs, which allows basically 2 mobile phones to share a zero knowledge proof, or actually a full credential if you wish, kind of like over Bluetooth. So it's kind of a very cool way of doing that with mobile devices. But a lot of the work that we were doing was kind of like showing us that actually there's a ton of great things out there around SSI, but there's some problems when it comes to getting up and running quite quickly. So we found that even when we were talking to some of our engineers, trying to get them to start work with us as part of their onboarding process, that things like understanding the SSI principles was a little bit tricky at first, but then trying to get things up and running, especially with an Occupy agent, that became quite, not tedious, but it definitely wasn't a quick, easy process. This kind of got reiterated back to us when we've been talking to a number of businesses saying, look, why don't you deploy this? We'll get a Docker instance. And they started to have to understand too much of the infrastructure below that. So while there's many workshops and samples around how to kind of work with Occupy and kind of embrace SSI, getting the agent up and running meant you needed a bit too much domain knowledge, information to really understand the workings of Occupy. You know, we've all been engineers, or we know engineers. They like to get things up and running pretty quickly, right? A proof of concept. They want to do that as quick and seamlessly as possible. So how could we jumpstart that? And the reason why we ended up doing this work with Microsoft Azure was more to do with actually when we started looking at certain business segments, and my background was originally, or is still very much, in financial services. When you get to talk to regulated businesses, they don't want to really look at on-prem anymore, but they're looking at certain cloud providers and certain infrastructures that they can leverage, or platforms within those cloud providers. So we've got very much some very firm feedback, shall I say, saying, look, if this works in AWS and I can just deploy it, or in Azure, great. Now, Azure seems to be more of a platform of choice for financial services, and it does give you more of that platform as a service kind of experience. So we've kind of wandered our way into how do we get Occupy deployments up and running as a managed application as easy as possible for anyone in the community to use, but on that Azure infrastructure. And the way we've done that is we've built something called an Azure Managed App. You may know it as an Azure Container Application if you're familiar with Microsoft Azure. What it allows you to do is to actually deploy it as like a black box. So it feels like a black box agent. You don't need to see any of the infrastructure or any of the workings underneath Occupy. It's downloadable from the Azure Marketplace. The configuration that you require of that is actually the same stuff as you'd see in Docker, but it's just presented in a very Azure friendly or Azure seamless way. The underlying infrastructure at that point is then administered by Microsoft, so they'll maintain the scalability of it, make sure you've got that elastic scale up and down, the resilience, the performance aspects of it. And if you have any problems with it, as we as ID Crypt Global can go in as an administrator and have a look at if there's something underlyingly wrong with your agent. But apart from that, it's your agent. It runs in Azure. It's in your subscription. It's in your tenant. You maintain it. You control it. It's just there, right? So what I'll do at this point, I think it's probably, if I just stop sharing this screen and then share a different screen, I'll walk you through. Actually, I'll do a deployment, right? So we'll actually go through what it looks like in Microsoft Azure itself. Bear with me for a moment. Yeah, so I think everyone can see the screen now. Yeah.
Yes, looks
Good.
great.
Great stuff. So I'm just in my Azure subscription, my tenant, and there's the usual things that you can see here. But if I just draw you straight away to the marketplace. So if I go into the marketplace itself, you then get presented with, well, you can browse all these things, but these are basically thousands and thousands of services or components and tools that you can add into your Azure subscription and download into your tenant. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly search at the top here for what we call as the IDC agent. Let's close that. And then you get this IDC agent available here. So you can see it's an Occupy compatible cloud agent. It's actually just pure Occupy at this particular point. We do have other agents that we've also badged under IDC agents. So you have to be a bit aware of which one's what. But yeah, you're looking for the Occupy compatible agent. If I click on that, I get the kind of like standard Azure feeling, right? If I was downloading SQL database or I was downloading any other component from Microsoft, you get the same experience. So I can have a quick overview and read through what am I actually looking at, what am I deploying. There's some plans and pricing, as in how much is it going to cost me to run on the infrastructure? What is Microsoft going to charge me for the privilege of leveraging this software and technology? And there's some usage and information support. So you can go to our website, you can call us for support. And there's some other categorizations around the service itself. as I said, you're looking for a particular edition. It's the community edition, which is your pure Occupy, the latest version. And then I'm going to press create. And when I come into the creation here, this is kind of like, well, this is a deployment template, essentially. So what we're going to do at this point is just go through the basic setup. So the subscription I've got, that's my Azure subscription, fine. The resource group. Now, I can actually create a new one, or I could select one from an existing resource group. So I'm just going to grab Andrew's test, to be honest with you. And then if you're familiar with Azure, if you've got your component available in a number of regions, you can select which regions you can deploy into. Now, we've decided that actually you can deploy this anywhere in the world. So, you know, I'm in the UK. If I want to select UK South, that will be the Azure region that I select. If we're on the East Coast of the States, I go East US. But you can see all of these different regions that Microsoft supports, and therefore our IDC agent or the Occupy agent itself can be deployed anywhere you want around the globe. I'm going to leave that as East US. Application name, whatever you want to call it, right? I'm just going to call it my IDC agent CE, Community Edition. Get a little green tick, so I know that actually this particular part of configuration is all great, and then I carry on. When I get into the agent and the vault, so we call it a vault, and it's just, funny enough, it's just a bit of marketing or terminology that we've kind of landed on when we spoke to some regulated businesses. They didn't like the term wallet. I don't know why, but they kind of feel it's not appropriate for something that's sitting in the cloud. So we just rebadged it as your vault as opposed to your wallet. I can select the sovereign network we've set this one up for, so testnet or mainnet. I'm going to leave it on testnet. And then you'll notice I've got these little information tooltips that give me some information if I'm very new to Occupy and understanding what I need to put in these configuration. So a little IDC, a little agent label. So I'm just going to call it my IDC agent. And then you've got the seed. Again, this is typically the tooltip. Say exactly has to be 32 characters long. I'm just going to go and grab one or create one over on another screen. And then my API key, again, little tooltip is going to tell me exactly what that's for. As you can see, this is all to try and make everything as easy as possible. You know what I mean? It's a user interface. There's no command line prompts. We're just trying to keep everything as simple and as quick as possible. Your vault name, what do you want to give it as a name? So between 3 and 30 characters long, whatever you want. I'm just going to call it the IDC agent vault. And then a vault key. I don't know, I'll just grab one here. Obviously, I would manage my passwords and stuff a little bit better than I'm doing right now. And then I'm going to provide a password for my admin. And I'm going to confirm that. Okay. So the little green ticks mean I've basically passed the initial validation that these are all valid inputs or parameters for configuration. Everything looks great to me. So I can press next. And then you'll see some information around kind of like your subscription, who owns it. So Lauren Wilson actually is the CEO of ID Crypt Global. So everything's in her name at the moment. My contact email address there, my number. Some pricing information here is how much Azure is going to cost you to run that as a managed service. So that's for your AKS cluster, for your Flex DB at the back end. We're not using Postgres, but it uses Flex. And all the infrastructure behind that, plus the ID Crypt managed service capabilities there. You'll notice there's a little bit of a disclaimer about co-admin access permission. So this is kind of like break glass. So we can't access the infrastructure underneath. So we can't get into the wallet itself and start looking around as ID Crypt Global. We can't do that. But we can request kind of like permission from the subscription and the tenant owner if there is actually a requirement for us to do that, in which case it's kind of like a break glass process that would then allow us to access it and have a look. The reality is we wouldn't do that, right? Some final bit of information, just confirmation at the bottom here. So here's the basic information that I put in on that first screen. And then here's my agent and vault information that I put in. I'm all happy with that. So I can just press create. And then you'll notice in the top right of the screen starts to initialize my deployment. So this will actually trigger off a deployment. Oh, and then we jump around. And you start to see the deployment in progress. So that's actually deployed into my Andrew test resource group. Now, it'll take a little while to deploy, but once it does, the screen gets replaced with kind of like an IDCrypt logo there, some brief information around what does a managed service mean to you, as in you don't need domain specific or specific information around how this Akamai agent works at all. You can rely on that being run by Microsoft and IDCrypt in the background. The last little thing to bring your attention to, and I'll jump back to the PowerPoint actually whilst this is deploying. But yep, sorry, you can see that it's just popped up manage application. There's the agent resource, and that'll take probably between 10 and 12 minutes to actually go through, deploy, finalize everything, and deliver what we call the outputs. So I'm just going to jump back to presentation. Where is it? I'm just going to, sorry, flip screens again. Benefit of multiple screens. So actually skip this slide really. A quick recap really. All we've done is we've found the IDCrypt agent in Microsoft Azure, the marketplace. We've selected that, gone with the community edition. As I said, it takes between 11 and 15 minutes to actually deploy, and that's with all your parameters and everything's up and running. You don't need to worry about the underlying infrastructure, so you can just focus on building, your software, your components, learn about SSI, run some of the workshops or things you find in GitHub and basically get up and running very, very quickly. The thing to bring your attention to, obviously we went through the configuration on the left, but on the right here is once it's deployed, you'll see as the resource group, you've got your overview, your activity log. You can set additional control parameters around who can access that. So that's your access control management, authorizations, and there's a ton of the usual seamlessly integrated Azure stuff. But the key one to bring your attention to is your parameters and outputs. So the reason I say that is that once your agent is deployed, you need to know where the port is for your DIDCOM communications, and you need to know how you can access the admin API. And that's kind of randomized based on where it's deployed. So once it's deployed, it will give you the port number. It will give you the full URI for the admin API and how to access that as part of those outputs. So you can quickly go to parameters and outputs, see all the parameters you originally put in, and then you can see all of the outputs there that allow you to basically get up and running and utilize it. The final thing to say is, obviously, I've gone through that very quickly as kind of like a get up and running. However, if you're actually looking to do this as more production-based, again, you can still use the agent, deploy it in exactly the same way. You're just likely to lock it down considerably more with the access control functionality. But that's all seamlessly integrated into Azure. So if you want to create a VNet around how you access the admin API and only certain like Azure serverless functions, for example, can access it, you can tie that in very quickly in the same way you would do with any other piece of Azure software. I don't really want to bore you guys and carry on and go back to a screen where you're just waiting for something to deploy. So all I would say is if there's anyone who wants any information on this, there's an email address here at the bottom, or you can reach out to me directly. We do have other editions of Akamai, or we call them IDCrypt agents, but there's basically Akamai with a number of additional proprietary plugins in there. Some of those we're open sourcing in the next couple of months, and some of them are a bit more proprietary to solutions that we provide to some customers. So they're just, if you discover those in the marketplace, it's because those customers download it and use it specifically for their use case. I'll stop sharing and say any questions or anything somebody didn't understand or want to go over again. More than happy to discuss it further.
It's Tim here. I'm curious as to what those additional plugins are and functionality above the community edition. So I looked at your website, it wasn't clear to me. I was wondering if you could just give a brief overview of which ones you're planning to open source.
Yeah, so there's a couple in there. So for example, we have some where we're starting to build a plugin that will take files that you've got and encrypt it based on your digital identity, whichever DID you wish to allocate to it. And that then hooks into something like a Microsoft OneDrive or a Google Drive. And therefore you can store those files encrypted at rest using your digital identity that's been stored in your wallet or in your vault. That's one we're looking to probably open source once it's gone through the final beta testing. We have some other stuff that's not on the website, actually, that's proprietary to customers who wanted certain things added in. Some of it is just basic stuff like, okay, we want to know how many times we've hit this particular API within the Occupy agent. How many times have we decided to run a proof, and we've built some plugins to just pull that out and extrapolate that into like a data lake and for business intelligence. So we probably wouldn't open source that stuff. It's quite proprietary. We're charging for that, and it's only 1 or 2 clients are actually using it. But the stuff that we think has got more value across the community, we will definitely be open sourcing. The final one I should say is we're starting to do something called AMP, which is authentic media protection. So we've got some work we've done around that. We're using DIDCOM as part of the way that you can verify media files. And we are open sourcing the entire verification library that we've built for that. And that will be available once we're out of our early access program. So as soon as we've finished that with a number of content creators and companies, we will open source that verification plugin.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just sorry, one quick follow-up. Do you support endorsement in your Azure deployment?
Yes, we not in the community edition, or well, whatever's in Occupy is in the community edition, but we do support endorsement. But we go through a bit of a process and try and understand who we're endorsing. So we do some quite enhanced due diligence on them, so that if we do endorse them and give them endorser rights, so to speak, that we know exactly who is writing to the ledger that we have endorsed. So we wouldn't just go, oh, we'll endorse you, away you go. There is quite a process that we go through.
Thank you.
Go on, Brett. Sorry.
So out of curiosity, are you employing vector technology at all in this?
Vector technology?
Like mathematical physics, context, magnitude, direction, that kind of technology, or no?
No. So this is purely Occupy that you've seen that we're deploying in there. So we haven't really tinkered with it at all. It's kind of been made, the integration's been made into the Azure Marketplace and into your Azure tenant, and the way that we do that. And then we provide the managed services underneath to make sure that it stays running and scalable within Azure. So that's all we've really gone through.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have insights into why the word wallet wasn't very popular?
Yes. So we spoke to a credit union, a couple of credit unions, and I think there's about five of them came back and said, look, wallet to us sounds insecure. It just doesn't sound like it's something that should be sitting in the cloud. It sounds like something in my pocket or on the phone. And I don't really visualize wallet as meaning security. So they kind of got it for interoperability and some of obviously the things that we discussed. They just didn't like it. So we changed ours to Vault. And funny enough, the people who objected in risk let it go through. So I find it quite almost childish, but if it's a bit of marketing and a bit of spin, then fine. So we've rebranded everything to Vault instead of Wallet.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I think when we start talking to regulated businesses, it's quite funny because the people who make buying decisions aren't very technical. And therefore they base their decisions a lot on perception, right? And some of their perception, I'm trying to be polite here, some of the perception is maybe not from recent technology, it's from slightly older technology. So when they hear things like Vault, they think of, a safe with a big lock on it, so to speak, and it's really secure and uber protective and great. That's what we like. Wallet, they think is something you can just open and pull your credit card, debit card out. So it's just that kind of association of words. So we've played on fiddling around with that, and we found that Vault lands very well, but Wallet doesn't.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Most of us have probably lost a wallet at one point or another and can't really get it back. So yeah, that's interesting. I was curious as well about the co-admin access permissions. Could you just explain again what that means? And you said that you also can access the admin API as a user?
So no, so as ID Crypt, we cannot access that, right? So all we see is the underlying infrastructure, as in what Microsoft presents back to us. So by default, when it's deployed into someone's environment, we can't see anything. We just know that there's an agent that's been deployed at, say, John Smith's company. That's all we see. And we see a health status. That's it. So we can't really do anything with it apart from monitor that health status. The co-admin does allow us, though, to ask for permission. So if we go back to John Smith's business and say, we believe there's something wrong with your agent, do you want us to look at it? They could actually say yes. They give us permission, and Microsoft essentially then allow us at that point to look at the underlying infrastructure. So we could have a look at, if you're running Postgres or Flex in our case, look at that particular database, or you could look at the logs. We can access those things. But without that break class permission, we don't have any access at all.
Okay. Interesting.
Likewise, you as the company that own it, you don't have any access. You can configure it in terms of security, you can configure it in terms of change your outputs and things like that, but you don't know what actually makes the underlying infrastructure. So if you come and see the agent deployed, it just presents itself as IDC agent. That's it. You don't see the resource groups that are underneath it. So you don't see Postgres, you don't see AKS clusters, you don't see the networking underneath there, you don't see anything. You just see the IDC.
Okay.
We've actually found that adds another layer of security, funny enough. So if you think about bad actors within inside an organization, if they have permissions to get into the vault or the wallet, and start poking around, they could actually start seeing DIDs. They can start seeing a lot more information in there. They can access proofs that have been shared in the past, everything else, right? But because it's presented itself as like this black box, no one has that access. So you as a company that's using it, you don't have to worry about bad actors because they can't get access to it. Likewise, we can't access it because we haven't got the break glass. Microsoft doesn't access it themselves because they don't know what it is. They just see it as a bunch of AKS clusters and other things. So that means that there's an additional layer of security that is actually quite helpful when you start looking at regulated businesses.
Yeah, interesting.
Go on, Brett.
So with regards to data analytics, what would be the functionality with the data analytics?
In terms of what we can collect? Yeah, so if we want to collect analytics, let's say from a plugin that we've added to an agent, it has to kind of like, we call it call home. So it has to send the analytics either out into their own tenant, into like a data lake, or it sends the analytics out back to us through a permissioned kind of like tunnel. So we can't see too much information inside, well, we can't see anything inside the agency. If you create analytics and you store it within Akamai itself, no one can access it. So you need a way of pushing that information out. So in the plugins that we've looked at or we've put together, we've pushed that out into a data lake or into Databricks in Azure, or we've actually sent it back to IDCrypt itself through a standard RESTful API that's been permissioned and allowed to connect to that endpoint only.
Very nice.
How does the process you walked us through differ for individuals versus businesses?
Doesn't at all. So that process is exactly the same. Sorry, when you say individuals trying to run Akamai.
Yeah, like you said at the beginning that you serve both individuals and businesses. So I guess individuals who are your customers, your users.
Yeah, so individuals, if they're like engineers and they want to get an agent up and running, it's exactly the same process. The billing looks slightly different to them because Microsoft bills individuals different to corporates. So that's quite interesting. Likewise, if you're a corporate on Azure and you have something called an EA agreement, you kind of pay for stuff up front. So you agree a minimum spend with Microsoft, of which your agent then becomes free. It disappears in terms of a cost because you've already pre-committed costs across the wider Azure infrastructure that you utilize. We also service individuals, as in we're just finishing off a mobile application like a wallet. Again, it's called a vault for us. And that's basically your SSI-based wallet. We're starting to try and make it compatible with some of this EU stuff that's coming out. Obviously, us being from the UK, we're looking at that, though I'm not a great fan of what the EU is doing. But so we've started to put that application together ourselves, and our wallet, we've kind of based it around a high level of confidence in an individual's identity. So we don't allow people to just self-attest to stuff. You have to have government-based documents before we'll issue you an identity into that wallet. It's a standard SSI wallet, so you can use it in any way you want. Anybody else's credentials that can come in and out of the app is fine. But the identity that we issue is kind of like that high confidence level. And then we tie that into our experience within financial services. So we build a digital identity risk profile off the back of that can be shared as credentials or as a service base if you as a user wish to share that. The ultimate benefit there is that we believe if you do that, you can then go to bank accounts and open them correctly, because the risk profile is actually more important than your KYC, believe it or not.
Interesting. Thank you.
And that app should be out in the next well, actually you're in the States, right? So it won't be out in the States for a while. It's just released here next Monday, funny enough.
Nice. That's exciting.
Yeah, and part of that is also, so when I said businesses and individuals, I mentioned the Bluetooth open source tooling that we did, the SDK. We do have a business app that's called Just Verify that allows your corner stores, for example, to face-to-face just verify your credentials or your age. So you can do age verification. You could ask for your passport verification if you want to, for the purposes of voting. And that goes over Bluetooth between the two devices. So we're just starting to showcase that next week here in the UK. Hopefully we'll get some traction, but it's quite slow trying to get people to understand some of these concepts.
Are the verifiers, are the corner stores set up to be able to verify that information?
So no, but they can download the Verify app. I mean, it's free, and they can have it on their phone, and then we're going to try and get them educated and understanding how to do this. So we're not charging for that. What we may charge for is services that are related to like an audit behind that. So if you had an investigation, someone did you sell cigarettes to someone under the age of 18, at least you could prove for an audit trail that actually they did the right checks and everything else. So we would sell them the service, not the capability, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's what we hope to do in the next couple of weeks, right? So individuals and businesses, and tying them together, it's awkward because you have that chicken and egg, whereas businesses say, we'll use it if you've got millions of users who've got your app. And likewise, if you give it to users, they go, well, I can't use it anywhere, so it's pointless.
Right.
You do end up with that kind of nuance. Anything else I can go over very quickly, or anybody want to recap, or are we okay?
Just out of curiosity, did the deployment complete?
Out of curiosity, it is still running at the moment. But because you guys, I didn't think you'd want to see it, I did just stop it.
Oh, all good.
But yeah, it just deployed. I can show you what one looks like, actually. Can I show you what one looks like? Yeah, so I've stopped it. So it's going to say fail to provision, but let me just share the screen so I can show you how it presents itself. Yeah, so this is one I've just stopped, actually. I just terminated so a few seconds ago. But if I go in, so obviously this is saying it's failed to provision because I've stopped it. But that's how it presents itself. So that's all you get, really. You get the little logo, welcome to manage applications, a blurb, some information at the top here, and then your parameters and outputs. If you clicked on that, I mean, the outputs have stopped because I've terminated the deployment. But you can see here's my original parameters that I put in, and then the outputs, as I said, that would have your admin URI and other information. But that's all you've got. The rest of it is all just standard Azure that's integrated to it. So if you want to look at your instant access and you want to add some roles, role assignments, who can deny, all those sorts of things, you can do that through the standard Azure interface. But yeah, your parameters and outputs is the key point.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for showing us that.
So guys, thanks for having me, if that makes sense. I know I've kind of run through it very quickly. If anyone's got any questions in the future or anything, I'm happy to just take those whenever. And we're happy to try and publicize a little bit more about some of the open source stuff that we're pushing back out into the community. We haven't done a great job, I don't think, of doing that, because the Bluetooth component has been there for probably 6 months now. I don't think anyone's aware of it.
Nice. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much for joining us. This was an awesome demo and presentation.
And Andrew, if
Thanks.
possible, you could get Shar and myself some links about IDCrypt and the solution, so I can make sure it's included in the YouTube video. This way, if folks want to find out more, they can get in touch.
Definitely. I'll ping you that later. Shortly
Sounds
after this.
great. Yeah, and if you'd like to send me the slides from your presentation too, I can add them to the meeting page for those who are watching the recording and want to follow along as well.
Yeah, I will do.
Great. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thanks for having me. I'm going to drop off just because here in the UK it's 4:45, and you can say I dropped a hint. I've got 4 kids, so I can hear them in the background making noise, and some of that noise is Dad, where's my denim? So I'm going to go and play Daddy Game. Really great to meet everyone, and I'll share that information as soon as I can later today.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Lovely.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
See you. All right. Well, that does bring us to the end of our meeting today. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And I believe it was streamed live to YouTube. So if you missed anything or want to rewatch, you can find the recording there.
Sounds great. Thank you so
All right.
much, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
See everyone later.
Thank you.